Hey guys, how y'all doing? It's Dr. Steve and Dr. Tim, the Ouch Doctors. We're real excited about today. We're going to be talking to you today about how to get in action, bro.
Hey, this is Dr. Tim here, and I'm the half of the dynamic duo of the Ouch Doctors, and I'm going to get in action by sharing this. We are not your doctors, we're not your therapists, but we are going to share a bunch of really cool health information. We're not telling you to eliminate this from your life or add this or advising anything or prescribing anything, but we are laying some awesome truth on you that you can take what you need, get some questions formulated, go back to your awesome health professionals yourself and ask them. So that's what we're here for. Also like to invite you to jump on our YouTube channel, New Thinking on Old Pain, and jump on there. And we have our free gift at the very end. I think Dr. Steve's going to talk about that at the end. And like us on Facebook too. Just do all that stuff so we can keep giving you some good information here as we go along. And Dr. Steve?
Yeah, well, of course, we always appreciate your feedback, so please feel free to comment and ask questions. At the end of the show, we'll have one big tip for you, something that you could take with you at the end of the show and help you to move further toward mastery of your own pain. And as Dr. Tim said, we'll be talking a little bit about our free gift for you as well. So getting in action. This is a very, very important piece of the puzzle here because, guys, we are often much more knowledgeable than we give ourselves credit for. We have been exposed to a lot of different tools and strategies. Even here on this show over the course of the last 18 episodes, you've learned so much about the various elements of being healthy and being pain-free. We've talked about nutrition and exercise and mindfulness and hypnosis and cognitive behavioral therapy and all sorts of other things that point you in the direction of maintaining your health. But many of them do require a certain amount of activity, of practice, of commitment, and of willingness to do the things that are necessary to get the results that we've been talking about. And all of us, myself and Dr. Tim included, are under the spell of our own subconscious mind, our own ways of doing things that we've gotten so used to over time that to make a change, to choose a new way of being, to take on that new exercise program, to stop eating all that chocolate, to stop drinking all that soda and knocking back on your sugar, all of those things do require a certain amount of commitment on your part. And what we find, and I'm sure you found for yourself, is that despite our best intentions, despite our most exciting images and visions of what's possible for us, sometimes we just stay stuck. And so that's what we want to talk to you about today is why are we stuck? And what do we need to do to get unstuck so we actually do, in fact, take action? So I've got a few things to say about that, and Dr. Tim as well will chime in with some ideas here. And I want to start by telling you a story. This is a story of back in the day when I was a hypnotist doing stage hypnosis shows, and I was performing as the official hypnotist for spring break. And in the middle of one of my shows in Jamaica, I had one of my subjects who I told three things. I said, when you wake up, number one, you don't believe you're hypnotized. Number two, this is the worst show you've ever seen. And number three, there's an invisible wall 3 feet in front of you. And I woke everybody up and everybody said, I said, how's everybody doing? And everybody says, we're great. And this guy screams, you suck. I said, well, then leave. And the guy gets up, he takes 3 steps and he hits the wall. And he starts to push and push. And he finally sits back down and he crosses his arms and he starts to pout. And I said, what's the problem? He says, nothing. I said, are you hypnotized? He goes, no. I said, are you having fun? He says, no. I said, then why don't you leave? And he thinks for a minute. He says, I'm not going to give you the satisfaction. And that's when I realized a profound truth. And that is that we all face a wall of resistance, a wall of resistance. And when we attempt to achieve something new in our lives, to move beyond our usual day-to-day, regular, patterned, neuroplasticity-based way of doing things, and we haven't yet built those new patterns and those new pathways, the resistance is enormous. And what we'll do is we'll imagine that the problem is something on the other side of that wall, like well, I can't do this because, or somebody won't let me, or because it's cold outside, so I can't exercise, or any number of things. But what those who have become skilled at making changes in their lives do to start with is to realize that your number one enemy, in fact, your only real enemy in the path toward growth and change, is resistance. Resistance is a force unto itself. It lives in and among all of us. It is impersonal, meaning it's not pointing the finger just at you, it's doing it to everybody. It's ruthless. It will make you miserable, and it will keep you from living the life of your dreams, because resistance is a monster. And if you allow resistance to continue unfettered while you begin to fight battles with everything outside of yourself, you never get anywhere. And so beginning to point the finger at resistance itself is the first step to overcoming the changes that you need to make. Now, what does resistance do, and how is it so brilliant at holding us back? Well, because resistance has many faces and many forms and many ways of causing us to stop in our tracks. One way is by causing us pain. Oh, I don't like the way this feels, and so I'm going to stop doing it. One way that it does it is by causing us fear. This is just too scary. I don't want to go to that place. One way that it does it is by boredom. And if you've ever set a goal for yourself, a New Year's resolution, and a few days go by, 5, 6, 7, 8 days go by, and now all of a sudden you're starting to think to yourself, it didn't really matter that much. I didn't really want to do that anyway. That's resistance wearing the face of boredom, wearing the face of blasé, apathy, and all the ways in which it will stop you. Because it's one thing when something is really strongly coming at you, then you might push back. But if what you're hearing is, oh, it's not that big a deal, then you go right along with that. And so what those who are really trying to move toward a new way of being, changing your diet, changing your activity level, changing your attitude, changing your concept of how you manage your own belief system, is to know going into it that resistance is lurking in the dark, knowing that it's got many, many faces and will put on whichever one is going to be most creative and most powerful in stopping you in your tracks, and that the only way that you're going to overcome resistance is to prepare for it in advance, to know that resistance is on its way. And as soon as I notice that I'm no longer as passionate and motivated to move in the direction I said I was going to move in, that's the time not to just try harder, but to look at resistance. This is that thing. This is that resistance. And it's all a function of the subconscious mind, which is why the work that Dr. Tim and I do requires that we quiet your mind and get into the subconscious, where we can then start to program you to move forward more quickly and more steadily in a positive direction. Dr. Tim.
So what you're saying, Dr. Steve, is be curious about your walls and your resistance. I love that.
Yeah.
It happens with me too in the regards of resistance. Now, I've found that even when, because I do a lot of stuff, but I still find myself, dropping off and forgetting things that I really want to do. And an example of this is I really want to do more strength training. Strength training, I'm 60 years old. When you do strength training, it maintains your muscles, because we naturally deteriorate the muscles as we age. It's called sarcopenia. I don't want any sarcopenia in my life, man.
So sarcopenia.
Training.
You can't spell it.
You're right. I can't spell it. I don't want it. I don't want any part of that. So anyway, strength training, I can go great guns for a while because I don't even go to the gym. I just have my garage out there that I do it. And then something happens in my life that all of a sudden I remember a week later, I haven't done any strength training this week. And I think that's really common. And I think we can take the pressure off ourselves when you realize that even when you start and you're going great guns, it can just take a little event or a little change in your life to deviate yourself off that path. And I think it's super important to just forgive yourself, to pat yourself on the back and to say, you're awesome when you look in the mirror, and just start again. because that's all we're all going to be doing throughout life. We're going to be starting and forgetting and starting. So that's resistance is to me means it's a temporary blip. Forgive yourself, be kind to yourself, and just get back out there and do it, whatever it is.
So I love that because the way resistance will usually work is that when you discover that you've fallen off the wagon, then you say, oh, well, I guess I can't do it. I guess it's hopeless. And then you just stop. And that means resistance wins. Whereas if you take the approach that Dr. Tim is talking about, which is very much like the approach to meditation, your mind wanders, you bring it back, it wanders, you bring it back. You develop the capacity to notice when you aren't where you want to be, and without any judgment, without any fanfare, without any additional thinking, just come right back again. Now, what are some of the things you might do to help support you in staying consistent on your path and moving back to that path? One is journaling, right? Maybe you keep a journal of your exercises. And so there's a way that you're keeping track of it. Another way is journaling, again, with journaling, but another way of journaling would be to journal the resistance. Tell on yourself. Oh, today I found myself thinking, why bother? It's almost Thanksgiving. I guess I should just eat whatever I want to eat. Ha ha ha. Right? You're catching yourself instead of like believing yourself. Very, very powerful. And another thing,
being curious about it.
Being curious about it.
Back to these basic things, and we do this for a reason, because being curious is the first step about your pain and about your the walls that are up in front of you. And when you're curious about something, you're not being very judgy about it. And because if you're overly judgy about it, nothing gets done. You're going to just self-flagellate yourself. Again, be kind to yourself. Being curious about something takes that self-loathing and self-flagellating out of the system, because that doesn't help us.
Right. Now, another technique that I've found to be helpful for myself in building a discipline, which is essentially what we're talking about. We're talking about discipline. Discipline is freedom, meaning the more you discipline yourself, the freer you are to have the life you want to have in the long run. So one of the other ways we can discipline ourselves is by chunking things down. Correct, Dr. Tim?
Exactly. And by the way, I love what you just said, and the dichotomy of that discipline gives you freedom. Mm-hmm. I think that most people would think that if you're overly disciplined, then you have no freedom in your life, and that's one reason they don't start. That's so cool.
Yeah.
You need to write that down.
Write that down.
Right.
I've got it written down. It's actually in both of my books.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
So you're talking about chunking as a way to make manageable parts of a seemingly insurmountable goal. So we've all heard the funny adage that if you want to eat an elephant, it's just one bite at a time. Or in my case, if you want to climb Mount Everest, it's one step at a time. Right. But it's a very valuable exercise is to just chunk down any seemingly huge goal to its small parts, and then it's easy.
And you just brought up something interesting when you talked about Mount Everest, because climbing Mount Everest, I would imagine not only is it one step at a time, but it's a constant vigilance about your own internal dialogue. Because right. If you're not careful, your mind can come in, the resistance can come in, and it can talk you out of doing what you're doing. Oh, this is terrible. I can't breathe. I don't know why I started doing this. I'm hurting. And so what we find is the more you invite your dialogue, the more you become disempowered, which means you need to learn to quiet that mind and return your attention to the task at hand. That one step up Everest, followed by the next step, followed by the next step, has to become a relatively silent process. It can't be a constant diatribe going on in your head about how terrible it is the whole time you're doing it. And this is true of your exercise. If you're exercising and you're finding yourself becoming more and more resistant and your energy is being depleted by it, check the internal dialogue and see if you can take all of your attention and just put it on your feet as they move on that treadmill, or your arms in motion, or your breathing as you're meditating. Whatever the strategy is that you're using, become very silent in the execution of that. And you'll find that it's a much easier path when your mind is quiet and when you're taking chunk after chunk after chunk Dr. Tim, do you remember, I might have mentioned this to you. It was something that I wrote about in a program that I have that's very germane here called Procrastination Annihilation. And I was talking about the concept of washing one dish.
Yes. Go
Right.
ahead.
So
Go for it.
your house is a mess, right? It's just, now this is a metaphor, right? Because your body might be a mess, or your mind might be a mess. But in this case, it's your house is a mess. And how are you ever going to clean it up? How are you ever going to make your body strong? How are you ever going to like not be neurotic? And it's just overwhelming because there's so much to look at, so many, symptoms. And your house is filled with disarray, and there's towels and blankets over there and food wrappers over there, and the sink is piled up as high as it'll go. And the answer to this is wash one dish. Because when you say, my commitment right now is to wash one dish, and you go to the sink and you wash one dish and you say, I've met my goal. But then again, as long as I'm here, maybe I'll do another dish. And now I feel even better because I've exceeded my goal. And you know what? Now that I'm here, why leave a bunch of dishes in the sink? Let me finish up the dishes, and then I can leave the kitchen. Well, how often do you do that? You finish up the dishes and you think, well, let me just wipe off one of the counters. And it becomes, it's momentum building. So think of one little thing. Now, you know how I got back into exercise a while back was I said, tomorrow I'm putting on my sneakers. That was it. I put on my sneakers. I didn't have to do anything else. I could put them on and take them right back off. And I met the goal for that day.
I've told patients to do one push-up. That's all I want you to do is one push-up. And they look at me funny like I'm an idiot. But they kind of figure out pretty quickly what I'm trying to do too.
That's
and
right.
It's work. It's chunking. Our minds are funny. We human beings are crazy animals. We have to work with that rather than fight against it.
Beautiful. So here what we're talking about are tools, attitudes, and habits that will propel you toward motivation. So first we talked about understanding resistance and understanding what it is and what to do with it inside. And then we talked about the idea of chunking things down. And a third strategy that we want to really encourage you to do is planning. So it's very difficult. Like Dr. Tim, you did a really good job with this when you were talking about the TV20.
Right.
You said, don't wait until the first commercial comes to try to figure out what you're going to do in the 1 to 2 or 3 minutes of that commercial, but have it written down in advance, maybe the night before. So when you sit down to watch TV, you've got the checklist in front of you and you're just ticking away at it. And so planning in advance is a huge boon in the act of becoming more motivated. As long as you've got something in front of you and as long as you are practicing integrity, living with integrity, doing what you say you're going to do, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. Get your clothes ready to go exercise in the morning, the next morning. I find if I don't do that the night before, then, I'm not going to go first thing in the morning.
How does that apply, Dr. Tim, to food choices?
Right. And using that food as an example, I do the simplest thing, which is don't buy what I don't want to eat, what's going to make me feel bad later. Whatever you buy, you're going to consume. So buy good stuff, and then you're going to consume good stuff and don't have the yucky stuff around the house.
Yeah. And there's also the small plate concept.
Sure.
That's a great one, right? Don't be using your big plates. Use your little plates because we're all programmed. Realize, again, resistance is programming. We've been programmed to live inside of a box. And so if you want to vanquish your programming, vanquish your resistance, then be creative about it. If you've been taught, like I was taught, like Dr. Tim was taught growing up, finish everything on your plate. There are people starving in Africa, right? You remember hearing that?
Oh.
Well, then you're going to have a plate piled high with food and you're going to eat everything on your plate because that's what you're supposed to do. But if it's a much smaller plate, then you're already ahead of the game because you'll eat everything on that little plate. And you could start getting to the point where you have more discipline, to the point where you might say, I'll only eat half of what's on my plate. But starting with small plates is a great strategy. It's what they call a path strategy versus an elephant or rider strategy. So Dr. Tim, you know that from Chip and Dan Heath, who wrote the book Switch.
And I do not know that, but
it's great stuff. So they talk about the elephant, the rider, and the path. And they say that when you want to make a change, there are three concerns that you have when you're trying to change a behavior or a belief or a thought pattern. They're all behaviors, really, in essence. And the three are the elephant, the rider, and the path. The elephant represents your subconscious mind, the big, humongous, lumbering, slow, doing things the way it's always done them part of yourself. Then there's the rider, the rider who sits on top of the elephant, who's trying to get the elephant to go here or there. Come on, let's exercise. Come on, let's eat good food. And the rider has to be extremely skilled because he doesn't have the force and the power and the habitual tendencies of the elephant. So your conscious mind has to be trained to know how to speak to your subconscious. Your rider has to be skilled enough to know how to gently guide the elephant, right? So that's the conscious mind. The elephant is the subconscious. And the path, the path. Well, if I've got an elephant and I want to move it 100 yards down that way, but there are two ways of getting there. And one of the ways is a path that follows through a peanut farm. And there's peanuts all along the path. And the other one is just clear sailing. Where do I bring the elephant? Clear sailing, right? I want to go down the path that has no resistance. Because if I go down the path with all those peanuts, my elephant's going to stop every 2 seconds to eat peanuts. And so that applies beautifully to this thing about food, right? It's like, it's a path strategy, meaning clear the path for yourself, get the small dishes out, buy only healthy food, only put out athletic clothing, right? All this stuff. If you have like I like to meditate on a what's called a seiza bench, which is a little Japanese wooden bench that sits about this far up off the ground. You can put your feet up underneath it, so it assists you in kneeling, kind of sitting back on your heels. It's right there. I can see it from here.
I can't see it.
What's that? You can't see it here.
I can't see it.
Well, that's why you're not meditating as much as I am. But all that stuff, you want to have all of the tools at your disposal. You plan in advance, you chunk down to small pieces, you acknowledge the possibility that resistance is afoot, and you plan for that by making everything super, super easy.
The big three of getting things done and starting right now. And also you just kind of started to touch up against tomorrow's topic, which is, do you want to share what tomorrow's topic is?
I'm going to let you do that, Dr. Tim.
Okay, it's using self-talk to reduce pain.
Yeah.
That's tomorrow's topic. And I thought you were just starting to touch on that.
Yeah.
And so we're going to just put the kibosh on that for today because that's tomorrow's topic, which is awesome. So, Dr. Steve, we're getting down to the end of it. Do you want to introduce our Freedom from Pain kit and how to get it?
Yeah, guys, if you haven't yet gotten this, I highly encourage you to do it. Dr. Tim and I put some time into putting together this remarkable Freedom from Pain kit, which will at a later time be a part of a paid program, and so it won't be available for free anymore. So this is the time to go grab this. And all you need to do is go to theouchdoctors.com and put in your email address, and you will receive the Freedom from Pain kit, which includes a flow chart that shows you exactly what to do and when to do it throughout the day. It includes terms and strategies that help you to use that flow chart more effectively. And it includes a 14-day challenge, which you can use, a self-directed 14-day challenge to follow all the steps within the flow chart so that over the course of 14 days, you can track the changes you are experiencing by following these very simple, very easy, and very quick tips that you build into your day. So absolutely jump on that just as quickly as you can. And Dr. Tim, I think you've got a tip for us today, don't you?
I do have an OBT, a one big thing today.
All right.
And I just want to state two words: negativity bias. And what that is, it's a fancy psychobabble term for we crazy human beings, myself included, Dr. Steve included, tend to give more credence to a negative than a positive. We can have all kinds of awesome things like we get out of bed, we're alive, we have a pulse, our significant other loves us, we have a house over our head, we have some cereal in the some awesome granola in the kitchen, we have food, everything is going good, but we might trip over and stub our pinky toe first thing in the morning. And that becomes the pattern for the day. The day goes downhill because of that. That's just an example. So our crazy human minds tend to give more credence to a negative than a positive. So it goes back to counting your blessings. We have to count our blessings, and that's a different way of just doing your gratitude journaling, but it's a more specific way to do your gratitude journaling. Just focus on the good stuff and de-emphasize the bad. Now, this is especially a chronic condition for those of us who have experienced chronic pain in our life. John Sarno, the great mind spine originator back in the 70s and 80s, called it goodism. That he noticed a lot of people who came to see him with mind-body chronic pain, he would term goodists. They were like, oh, they were brought up like, he's such a good boy, or she was always such a good girl. And then certain personality types tend to be overly nurturing to everybody else and very susceptible to any kind of criticism for themselves. Mm-hmm. So if they get criticism and they, oh my God, this happened to me, they saw themselves as good people. So anything that kind of was a negative in that triggered chronic pain. So if you're a goodist, or if you're, a good girl or a good boy, you can relate to that, then this is an especially important exercise to do, is to make sure you count your blessings and be curious if your negative bias, the one little negative, is taking more space in your life than the multitudes of good things that are going on.
Beautiful.
Thanks, Dr. Steve.
I love it. I love it. Well, I guess I've only got one thing left to say, and that is train your brain.
Lose your pain.
Great seeing you guys. Take care now.